talk about some segmented bowls. I started making these probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. I'm gonna pass these around, not to brag about them, but just so you can see the different ideas that are in them. And we can start right there, and then just pass them around, and someone in the back's going to collect them. A lot of people feel that if you're doing a segmented bowl, that there's not as much waste wood with segmented bowls. Most segmented works will have a lot of waste wood. It's not quite as much as hollowing out a big solid bowl, but still there's a lot of waste wood. However, this technique here is basically called what are they? Trying to think the name of it. Anyhow, it's made from a board, just one board, and there's hardly any waste. So I'll try and show you how I do this. Most of these bowls are not utilitarian. They're more for to show, and although I mean they can be used for that. And the people that developed this technique is Dale Nish, who most of you have heard of him, and Mike Schuler in California. And I do have a book. Malcolm Tibbetts is really into this too, and this is an excellent book on segmented turns. Okay. This whole technique is really simple. It's really easy, but there is one thing you have to do to make it work, and that's be extremely accurate. I mean extremely accurate. What you do is you start out by making a sled, and this sled is a very basic sled. They have all kinds of sleds with slopes so the pieces slide off and so forth. But I find this is really good. And what I do after I put it in, I run it right through the saw, get this squared up, have one screw in here, and then you set your angle. And the angle, I like to use this. This thing gives you like tenths of a degree. It's
what do you call that tool?
It's a digital angle finder, and you can come up and look at it afterwards, but see as that moves, you can see the numbers changing. So I just set that up on the between the get this backwards here. I set that up between the wood and the saw blade, and you can get it to less than a tenth of a degree. So what you do is you have one screw here and then one here, and you have to do some tests. And once you find that you got the angle exactly the way you want, then you can excuse me, then you can screw it down. But I noticed the first time I did it, it was just a hair off. Now if you're off of let's say you're making 40 segments and you're off let's say a tenth of a degree, when you get done you're going to be off 4 degrees because you're making that many segments. So sometimes I just draw a pencil line and then I move it just a fraction of that pencil line, and it'll square right up. So, by the way, I'm a little discombobulated tonight, but if there's any questions, please, ask me questions as we go along.
So you're going to cover that. What angle do you need it?
Yeah, okay. This one here, and I have several of these, and they're very cheap to make. This one has 36 feet. Let's see. It's written wrong. Well, let's just say let's say you're doing, to make it simple, let's say you're making 36 pieces. was 360 degrees to a circle, and so 36 pieces would be 10 degrees or 5 degrees per side. And actually this one is, yeah, this is 30 pieces, 6 degrees per side, same thing. 30.
So whatever number of pieces, you just divide by 360.
Yeah, if you have 40
360.
pieces, for instance, that's 9 degrees or 4.5 degrees per side. So when you're cutting the wood, and you can, by the way, the wood you can you can take anything you want. You can use almost any thickness you want, although the best thickness is usually about 3/4. And your piece of wood to make a bowl like you just saw, about 30 inches will make that whole bowl out of one piece of wood. And if you're dividing it up into several different colors, you might have 10 inches per board for three colors. So when you cut it, you can see here, see the angle? And then what you do is you flip it, and you have a stop here, so each piece comes out as a wedge. And see if I can show you here. See, here's one that I put together. And by the way, you make these in full halves. You make 2 halves because you're going to cut these.
You're going to end up turning that, right?
Yeah. Well, after it's glued up.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll show you in a minute here. This. You see, this one same wood, but I set it up different. And then this the same thing. So what you do is you get these made like this, and you draw circles on it, and the circles usually are whatever the thickness of the wood is, plus about 1/8 of an inch. The 1/8 of an inch is just a rough guess as to what your saw blade is your bandsaw blade is going to be.
How do you get those little wedges bonded so tightly? How do you, like when you glue those pieces together, how do you hold it together till they're glued?
I use spring clamps and the regular, what do they call these? Pipe. Yeah, well, like a pipe, the blue ones. What company makes those? Irwin's, yeah. Yeah.
So where would the clamp go? I'm just trying to figure out how you do it.
Yeah, you don't do it all at once. You start with 2, and then you get them done. You go to 4, and then sometimes you have to put them this way, and
that's a tedious process.
It's it's hard to show you here. If you experiment, you do it enough, pretty soon you kind of catch the best way to put it together. So once you get this circle, then and by the way, as I say, if this has to come out pretty equal. Now, you can see this came out. You could probably get a little tiny bit of light through that, but when you get each ring cut, they're almost perfect, and you can sand them a little bit. Now, if you're Mike Tibbetts or Kurt Theobald, those guys are awesome. Every single piece is not only cut, but it's sanded, and they hold it up and they put light behind it, and so that it's perfect. But if you look at these are pretty tight. I mean, you can. They're super perfectionists, and that's fine. But I don't see much, that much difference. So the idea then, I made a drawing here. You take your bandsaw. And you set it at a 45-degree angle. And then these, well, it's hard to show this, but let's say my bandsaw is angled this way. Then this is cut, and it makes an angle. And then when these 2 pieces are glued together, That's what it looks like with, you know, with the angle on there. And then as this is put together, then see, these are glued together like that, and so forth, and that makes your bowl. And then each okay, you can set this any way you want. You can set it so the pattern is
So
you
how
know,
do you,
like that, or you can put it at little different angles, and that's why I pass those bowls around, because you can see each one is set different.
I missed a step, John. How do you go from that disc, that flat piece of all the wedges that's glued together, and now you've got a disc like that? How do you go to a ring? Do you turn that disc?
Yeah, when you
Bandsaw?
after you get these pieces, the two halves, all those pieces cut, you glue them together,
Right.
and then you start stacking them, and
We cut it with the bandsaw.
You cut it with the.
you,
You make it into
you
a
cut
ring
it-
with the bandsaw.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
She's
done
back
first.
to these, John. She
Yeah, I was
pointed
just
out
wondering how you
when
went
you were
from that
explaining
to-
setting your bandsaw
You use
table
a-
at 45 degrees.
That's what I missed.
She missed that.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's okay.
So
In
if
subsequent
you look
cuts.
at the cross section of this, you can't see it because I don't have it cut in half, but you see this kind of fits into
Yeah.
that
Okay.
angle, and near the top it's 45 degrees. As you come down, you can and start rounding it out, you can bring your angles up. So I just tentatively put 45, 45, 46, 47, 49, 51, 54. And obviously if you wanted a real tall bowl, you would set it up more 54 so it would come up straighter like this. If you want your bowl flared out, you would actually go a little bit less. But you can't vary it that much. You can go 4 or 5 degrees on either side.
So if I understand your drawing right, John, what you really got drawn on here, pretend this bowl has many more rings on it, folks. He's got the bowl on upside down, right? And then it's what angle is setting this table saw
that's
to.
right side up. This is the bottom.
That's
Like
the
this.
bottom, right?
Yeah.
But this is the top, I
No,
think.
this is the bottom. This is the bottom.
All right.
This is the bottom like this.
This is the side of your bowl coming up, right?
Right.
Go to the bottom.
No, this is the bottom here, this is the top.
All right.
Okay. So the way I do it, usually after I get my pieces cut, then I can determine what I want to make my base out of, and then you can put any kind of trim in there to set it off. And I just use the tailstock as my clamp. So this is sitting in here, and then I put my first piece on, clamp it, I put a piece of wood over it, clamp it. When that sets up, you just turn it roughly to get an idea where you're at, and then glue your next one on, and then so forth. See, I didn't. You can see I didn't cut the inside, but I did cut the outside.
So that part you do on the lathe.
Yeah.
So
The
John,
cutting the actual turning is the easy part, and as I say, the thing that takes the time of the patience is getting that angle right, so that it just turns out really nice.
If you glued all those layers together and then turned it, would it just fall apart?
No, it won't. But if you were off, I mean, this wall is a 1/4 inch thick, roughly, or 3/16. You've seen some of these. If you don't get that centered by doing each one, and you got you stacked it up and you thought, boy, that really looks good, and then you start turning it and it was wobbly, and these are so thin, you won't have anything to work with. And the other thing, by doing it this way, I really like on some of these bowls, I like to get this curve here, and like Dave showed us 2 or 3 months ago, instead of just going out flat, I like to go out flat and get just a little bit coming back, and it really adds to it. So
so John, I got a question.
Yeah.
When you're using the bandsaw, you're using the bandsaw on the halves, not the holes, not the whole. round.
Right, yeah, because you can't, I mean,
Right.
you can't have a whole
Yeah.
piece and,
Okay.
you know,
I just-
that's why it has to be done
Right.
Could
like
you,
that.
could you use a bandsaw, a circle jig and cut them?
No,
Well, actually,
I don't
I just
think
saw
so.
one on YouTube where that's what they did.
I'm not sure what you mean by
There's
circle.
5 ways to do everything when it
Oh,
comes
yeah.
to woodturning, so.
A lot of guys use, well, you want to use a fine tooth blade, that's the best. Half inch isn't bad. You can use it. You can use as much as a half inch, and you might have a little more control. I'm pretty good with the bandsaw, so 1/4 inch is fine for me. If you move it a little bit, this 1/4 inch is going to,
So you're cutting a
mark it
circle
up.
freehand.
Yeah.
So when you glue, do you use a press?
Better man than I.
No, I start with this, and then I just use my tailstock as the press. And I live out in the farm, so I'm always mowing, I'm always doing something. So I run in my shop, I glue something, I'm out there for 20 minutes. And, you know, they always say this glue needs overnight drying. 10 minutes and you can turn it. I'm not saying I recommend it, but, you know, if it's warm, you can turn it in 20 minutes without any problem. So I just have that there, and I get so much accomplished because I'm doing all kinds of stuff, and I'm just back there, and I glue pieces up, and, you know. Now, here's another, there's a couple little tricks on this. When you cut these pieces out on your saw, do not cut all the pieces out and then say, I'm going to glue them up. Because what happens, as soon as you, no matter how good your wood is, as soon as you cut that piece, it relieves some stress, and that wood is going to get a little tiny warp or a little bow or something like that. And again, if you know, you really need to use good dry wood for this. So the best thing is to have your saw set up, cut 2 or 3 pieces, glue them up immediately. And if you're sanding, fresh, sharp sandpaper, you have to use that, because if you don't, the little heat coming from the sandpaper is going to warp this. Then you got a problem. Now the other thing, you're wondering why this is so smooth, and a lot of you don't have this, but I have a drum sander, and so this, I think this was originally 3/4, and it's probably an 1/8 less than that, because I run it through there and get it flat, and then even after I sand, glue these pieces up, I run these through the belt sander. Whatever the thickness of this is, should be the widths. It's hard to explain it, but the width, so these come right down on top of each other. Little experimentation there, but once you get it, it's really one of the simplest things you can do, and you can make tons of these things. Just set your saw up, and don't ever try and make one of these. Set your saw up, get everything all set up, and just for a couple days, cut your pieces, experiment, put any color you want in there, put them together, see what they look like, and you know. The other thing is I have a lot of veneer, the real thin black veneer, and I put that between. It really sets it off, and that of course you don't have to have angle. You just put.
You just get a line
there.
then, right?
Yeah. And the way I do that, instead of putting a big piece on there and cutting it out, that's a real waste. I just take a piece of veneer and I cut it in a strip about this long with scissors, and then I just eyeball it, and I go like that and get a piece about that long, glue it on, put a little pressure on it, sets up in a few minutes, cut the next one, fit it, cut the next one, and by the time you get around your last piece, that's the only one you have to kind of get pretty accurate so it fits in there. It works real good. So it always takes a lot longer when you're putting veneer in.
You mentioned when you do the glue up and you get it set and you do all these other things and you come back, when you apply the glue initially to the ring, do you have to babysit it a while so it doesn't creep? Because your bowls and your spacing is perfect.
No, when I'm doing smaller segmented work, I just use the rub technique. If you put it flat and rub it, I'll tell you what happened. A couple of years, well, I guess 5 years ago, I went up to McDonald's, which I never eat there, but I was going by actually, and in their trash bin in the back, I saw all these tables. So I went in and I said, what are you doing with these tables? They're, you know, the McDonald's tables are about this big and they're Formica on top. And they said, we're throwing them out. I said, could I have them? No, you can't have them. But they're throwing them out, you know? So a couple hours later, I got my truck and just went over to the trash bin and loaded up. So I got about 5 of these tables, and I just take, and they're perfectly flat, and I just take beeswax and just a stick of beeswax and go over it. And man, you can glue right on top of that, and they just tap them, and they come right off, and the glue doesn't stick. And or you can use a scraper. And boy, those things, they've been a lifesaver.
Something good finally came out of McDonald's.
Yeah. So that works. You know, that works real nice. Let me see if I have any other little.
Got a question in the back, John?
Yeah.
What's your favorite glue to glue these with?
Oh, same. We should all be using is the Tight Bond 2. Yeah, that's real good. Let me see here. Get my glasses on. With these walls this thin already, turning this is real easy, and since the grain always runs, it's not like doing a solid bowl. The grain is always at the perfect angle, so very little vibration, cuts nice, and it's no problem. And then you know, you sand it, and then and by the way, I think Dave will agree with me. This is one of the nicest oils you can get. It's fine food safe finish.
TY oil.
Is that what it is? Mike Sorby.
Mike Sorge.
Sorge uses this. Yeah, 100% organic and dries in 1 to 2 hours. It's good stuff.
Flaxseed and shea nut oil.
Yeah. Right. So let's see what else I got here. Yeah, I think that's about it. So it's and you know, if anybody wants ever to see this, I have a shop. It's pretty well outfitted, like Dave's, and you know, anybody wants to sometime, they want to come over and see how I do this. It's a lot of fun. And by the way, if anybody has any logs, I just got a Wood Miser sawmill, and that thing is sweet. Oh boy, yeah. I've been cutting some cherry with crotch in it, and just gorgeous stuff, you know. So that's about it. And any more questions? Yeah.
It's not really a question, but on your, to cut your wedges to start with, you was talking about using a pencil mark. If you would set a block and use a screw, you can make a very minute adjustment either way.
That's what I have.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you mean on the sled? On the sled, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have several sleds. You know, I have one that does 12 segments, one that's 16. This one's 30. I was thinking it was 36, and I have a 40. Yeah.
Have you played around with any of the jigs that they have out now? I know they make a wheel type thing that almost looks like cold jaws that you can put your wood into and make it.
No.
This works for you, and this is what you do.
Yeah, the only thing I have, and I use this all the time. I have that. It's just a plastic disc with marks in it, a little hole, and you can draw your circle. It makes it really nice. And that's what I do with these. What I do with these is I just lay it down, find the center, and then I just
Draw your
turn,
circles.
you know. But I don't know how one would do this without a drum sander. I think that would be pretty difficult, lot of work to sand that and get it, you know, where you want it.
So John, do you use a bowl gouge or a scraper? What do you use to turn that?
Bowl gouge, I might touch up with a curved scraper
Okay.
in the end, you know. And I can't remember. I probably start with like 120 on the sandpaper, and I'm not one of these guys that goes down to 600 or you know. I like the feel of a little bit of texture, and so I will go down to like 220. That's what most of those bowls are. And then if you oil them frequently, they just have a nice feel to them. You know, part of the wood is not just the beauty, but it's how it feels. You know, and I'm not against something that's real shiny, but I know my wife can't stand anything shiny. She wants oil and everything. So.
How often do you re-oil?
You know, they say if you have a bowl, you should oil it once a week for the first month, once a month for the first year, and then every 6 months. I don't do that. You know, I put a coat of oil on. I mean, 2 or 3 times, and then after a year, you can go in and you can touch it up. But that's probably all you need, really.
So once it's seasoned, like once a year, kind of thing?
Yeah, or you know, it depends if you're using it a lot, of course. You know,
Yes.
so.
You chuck it up in there and that's it? Or?
Yeah, and it flares out. I can't remember. I think I have a one-way with two wheels on. To sometimes if there's a vibration, it just rolls. You know the was it spindle? You know, like a
You mean
like
on the chuck?
Support? The support?
no on the support.
Oh, you got a study rep?
Study, yes,
Study reps.
yeah. That comes in handy sometimes, but most of the time I don't use it. And then
Leave the tan in?
if you looked at the bottom, I always like to sign my name and the date, and then I always like to write the wood on there. I think that's people like that.
And you leave the tan in there? Or
Oh, this one I would
how do you turn it?
I just reverse it in one of those
Cold jaws?
cold jaws,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
and then you can finish the bottom one.
okay.
Usually it's not quite this thick. It's usually a little bit thinner.
So you would finish it out by taking that out, the center tenon, is that what you call it?
Probably. There's one bowl there that you probably saw in the center. There was a piece of zebra wood in the, you know, in the walnut. And I think what happened, I got it a little deep, and I suddenly realized I had about 1/16 of an inch bottom, so I just punched that out and put that little button in there.
Way
Nice.
to save that.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for John?
Woodturners are gonna make fun of it.
What?
Woodturners are gonna make fun of
Okay.
it.
And I've sold a lot of these. I get about 250 a piece for them. And
Nice price.
once you start cranking these, you can
Frank,
make one of these about 4 hours. It's not hard.
John, did you have a question about the pens from the other time you brought in the pens, if anyone?
Oh, I had a bowl like this that I brought in several times ago for show and tell, and I could not find it to bring in, and I had my pens with it, and I couldn't find it.
If anyone saw those pens,
That
let
wasn't
John
left
know.
here by any chance?
no, the only thing that was left here last meeting was somebody left their raffle items here.
okay,
And somebody won raffle items, and not forget who it was, and they left their name on the table, but it wasn't a bowl of pens.
okay.
That's all I remember. I was like one of the last ones to leave.
I was, a couple of weeks ago, I was in California. I was lucky enough to go to the Sam Maloff home,
Yeah.
and that was fascinating, yeah.
Fascinating.
Because his rocking chairs will sell for 30 grand, you know. And as I was walking out, there were 2 boxes about this wide and about that deep. And they were just full of Clara walnut. And most of it was squares this big and so long that you can make little boxes and gorgeous pieces of end cuts and stuff. Plenty of nice stuff there. I said, what do you want for these? $40. Okay, I'll take 2 boxes. Well, he had 2 boxes there.
Wow.
And I gave them to a friend, and he shipped them to me, and I don't know what he paid to ship them. It probably cost a
More
lot.
than that.
He said, just make me a, his wife, make her a vase or a bowl out of it, and so that's what I'm doing, so.
All right.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much tonight.
Okay.